What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Opendoor. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what really moved it, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So it went down 9.06%. It is recovering a little bit after hours, and that's largely because of Micron's earnings. But today, 608 the low, 688 the high, and 76.7 million shares being traded. So I actually did a video on Opendoor during the pre-market, where at that time we did have mortgage applications as well as mortgage market index coming in not the greatest, but at the time market didn't really seem to care all that much. Rather, it was largely focused on this right here. So Wedbush initiates coverage on quantum computing stocks, even though that has absolutely no relevance to Opendoor and most stocks out there. It's more of a sentiment. So Wedbush is kind of highly respected by Wall Street, and I think that's just because of their previous calls on like Palantir and a couple others. But nonetheless, Wedbush being somewhat optimistic on quantum was kind of the green light, at least in the eyes of Wall Street, that people's appetite for risk is on the table. That was unfortunately short-lived. So there was a couple of things that did come out that caused all of this downtrend. We had yesterday Trump saying that there's going to be a big announcement today, this evening at 9 o'clock. And based on some things that have popped up so far, it does look like there is going to be some potential maybe war announcement. That again is very speculative, but that seems to be the consensus. What people are going to is coming down the pipeline. So that of course isn't the greatest. Aside from that, this is something I've brought up time and time again. It's just more of a liquidity pinch linked to Bank of Japan potentially raising their rates, and that is Thursday evening. This is why we've seen a lot of big money exiting both crypto and equities to go back into money markets. And this has been more of a common occurrence. And in reality, at the same time, this is also just the tip of the iceberg. I think it is forecasted for Japan to continuously raise rates up until around 3 to 3.5%. So that's going to cause significant impact to the American bond market, which is going to trickle down to equities. Again, I know a lot of this unfortunately doesn't really have that much relevance to Opendoor exactly, but this is kind of the nature of the game. It's unfortunately getting moved through algorithmic trading, and you can kind of see that as well based on just the flow. A lot of smaller transactions, meaning that's just algorithmic trading really kind of moving Opendoor. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from all of that fun stuff, there wasn't really any news associated to Opendoor today. No SEC filings, no speculative topics. So that kind of hasn't changed since my earlier video, my pre-market video. Hopefully the market is very incentivized to push higher because of Micron's earnings. So they did raise guidance. So that was always seen as positive. Definitely a lot better than Oracle as well as Broadcom's most recent earnings. But today shorts did increase 750,000 shares. That is net. As I've brought up in the last couple of videos, there is a sign of naked shorting occurring, even though it is very difficult to prove. Shares on loan being 82.3, number of shares being shorted 111.69 million. So definitely interesting stuff. At the peak, it looks like shorts were increasing roughly around 4.8 million. During the pre-market, when I was doing that video, I believe that they were returning a little bit, like 100,000 shares. But at the peak, they were increasing 4.8 million. So they definitely did help guide the stock price down, and possibly it kind of matches with this general timing. So when Opendoor kind of showed a little bit of a recovery, I think that was just shorts hitting it down and suppressing it. So rather unfortunate. As per usual, you see some signs of manipulation. 3.4 million in calls though associated to the options, 939,000 in puts, and 54% of all the options being done today were bearish in nature. Consensus from a bull standpoint for it to be between that 650 and 7. So a little bit of a recovery is still on the table. Bears, they are anticipating for it to be sub 6 to 650. So the fact that we did close at 612, it's kind of in line with that. So even though everything did happen, there is a certain level of optimism still on the table. Looking at the secondary market, this is where you see a lot of institutions selling, and this is completely different from yesterday. So Opendoor had a nice push higher yesterday. And during my pre-market, I brought up some very abnormal transactions. This seems to be painting a different picture. Anything with a bid is a sell, anything with a ask is a buy. And so we did have some big ones, 31.8, 6.1, 6.1, so forth and so forth. So yeah, a lot of institutions appearing as though that they were selling. On the dark pool, you'd see a couple transactions, 5.6, 1.05. The dark pool is a little bit more difficult to distinguish what is a buy and a sell, only because dark pool is meant to be anonymous. So you kind of have to correlate this with the stock price. So for those of you that have some time, you can always pause it and kind of look at the stock price, what happened at the time. But this one was right after the bell, so at 15:03. So it is fair to assume that that actually did aid in it pushing a little bit higher. So something to kind of keep in mind. Aside from that though, with it right now at 612, not counting the after hours, it is trading between this S2 and this S3. So 574 is going to be that next strong support. 620 followed by 649 is going to be the next strong kind of support and resistance points. So not necessarily the best. Again, when I did my earlier video, I actually was somewhat optimistic. Even though this data was negative, it didn't look like the market cared about it at all. But yeah, obviously this was a little bit more of a bull trap in general, which is kind of funny because on my other YouTube channel, or I actually have quite a few of them in fact, but under Financial Journey, I do a pre-market video. I even said, based on just the lower volume and just the feel of the morning, it did feel like it was a bull trap. And so lo and behold, that's exactly what did happen. But nonetheless, though, these are some points to watch for if you're wanting to dollar cost average or swing trade or whatever. Aside from that, though, on the actual chart, you see stochastic RSI very, very oversold. So a good piece of news, you could see a very nice recovery. But aside from that, though, it did close below that 100-day moving average, and generally that is a very big deal. Luckily enough, it's actually been able to hold that for the last couple trading days where it was tested, but this is now the first time it closed below that 100-day moving average since it was, for the most part, right over here, July the 16th. So kind of crazy stuff, way back when it was at $1.35. So again, not necessarily the best. Actually, my apologies about that. Right over here, July the 11th, when it was at 78 cents, give or take, not the dollar range. But still, nonetheless, that is a pretty big deal. So kind of does signal that there might be some further consolidation. Although, as what we've seen with algorithmic trading, it doesn't take that much to really turn a stock around. But let me know your thoughts on Opendoor. Are you buying? Are you selling? What did you do with Opendoor today? One final thing, if you're looking for some solid on-point buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, pop over to my Patreon. I put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.